Hello, everyone. I want to thank Chairman Rogers for inviting me to participate in this summit and for his years of leadership on this vital issue, as well as his commitment to making American diplomacy as strong as it can be. Now, I know it might not be obvious why the U.S. Secretary of State is joining a conversation about America's opioid and addiction crisis. I don't work in law enforcement. I'm not a doctor, a counselor, a first responder. But our country's addiction crisis comes up in my work a great deal. The scope of the crisis is staggering. As you all know very well, the CDC estimates that more than 88,000 drug overdose deaths occurred in the United States between August 2019 and August 2020, the highest numbers ever recorded in a 12-year period. Those numbers represent an enormous amount of suffering by those who died from a cruel disease, the loved ones left behind, communities ravaged by addiction. The opioid crisis helps drive cycles of poverty, violence, despair. It's a public health crisis and an economic crisis. It's also a national security crisis. Almost all the illicit drugs responsible for America's drug overdose deaths are produced outside the United States. Disrupting the flow of opioids, especially synthetic opioids like fentanyl, is an urgent national priority. And it requires intensive diplomacy and global cooperation. We've seen in the pandemic that the criminal organizations behind the drug trade are highly adaptable. They use the tools of 21st century commerce, including internet-based marketing and sales, virtual currencies, social media, international postal services. And while the opioid crisis is worse in the United States than anywhere else, synthetic opioids are increasingly prevalent around the world. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to deterring and disrupting the production and trafficking of illicit drugs into the United States. The State Department is attacking the issue on multiple fronts at once. We're leveraging international institutions to mobilize a global response. In fact, next week, the annual United Nations Commission on Narcotic Drugs will meet, and the United States will advocate for a renewed focus on synthetic drugs and for better information sharing among countries on drug trafficking trends. We'll also vote to place international controls on synthetic opioids and push for those controls to happen fast, which will make it harder for criminal organizations to operate. We're pressing China to address the production and sale of precursor chemicals that are the ingredients for synthetic drugs. We're working with Mexico to stop the flow of drugs over the border. We're coordinating with the Treasury Department to apply financial sanctions and other deterrence tools to help bring transnational criminals to justice. We're strengthening coordination with the private sector, which plays an important role in fighting the illicit drug trade, including by sharing information with governments about suspicious orders and transactions, and by adopting crime-sensitive business practices to prevent the exploitation of their goods and services. And we're promoting best practices to reduce drug demand worldwide, because ultimately, the most powerful way to fight the global illicit drug trade is to reduce the demand for illicit drugs. This is the definition of a crisis that no single country, state, agency, community, or family can solve on its own. I want to thank each of you for being in this fight. In particular, the counselors, public health workers, social workers, and family members who face this crisis every day and fight it with everything you've got. Our nation's security, prosperity, safety, competitiveness, and our children's future well-being, all are at stake. The State Department is in this fight with you for as long as it takes. Thank you.